Innovating in ministry, but still keeping our focus today on the Church Revitalization Podcast.
Hello, and welcome to the Church Revitalization Podcast, brought to you by the Malfers Group team, where each week we tackle important, actionable topics to help churches thrive. And now, here's your hosts, Scott Ball and AJ Matthew.
Welcome to the Church Revitalization Podcast. My name is Scott Ball, and I'm joined by my friend and co-host, AJ Matthew. AJ, welcome back from Central America. Missed you last week. Was here all by my lonesome, holding the fort down, and I don't know if people like hearing me, just my voice.
It was dynamite. Dynamite, Scott.
Did you tell the truth? When you were flying back from Panama, did you listen to the episode?
Man, golly, what was I doing when I was flying back? I don't recall hearing the episode, but I remember that it posted, and I thought to myself, dynamite.
You know what? At least you're honest. All right. Before we hop into today's episode, we'd want to remind you, if you did not know, that the Healthy Church's Cool Kit. It is a toolkit. Cool. It's the toolkit for the cool kids. The Healthy Church's Toolkit is live right now, and pricing changes this week. So you have until 11:59 p.m. Eastern Time
Reformation
on Halloween night to sign up, at least for a free trial, and lock in a lower rate. So you want to do that. Why not? Why would you not?
It's a treat.
It is a treat. And the trick is, if you're there at midnight, the website actually may not have changed at midnight because I have to manually do that. But the trick is, if you click on it, you will see the coupon doesn't work anymore. So you really do want to get in there before 11:59 p.m. Eastern and sign up. Why not? Why not get 7 days free? You can always cancel if you think, no, this is lame. But you'll find it's the toolkit for the cool kids. So malfersgroup.com/toolkit. Take advantage of that special launch pricing, which ends spookily at 11:59 p.m. Eastern.
Spookily. Okay.
All right. So today we are talking about innovating in ministry. I think we need to be able to innovate without sabotaging our ministries, because some things are working and change for change's sake isn't any good, but also sometimes things need a little bit of freshening up. Things can get a little bit stale. Now, if you're me, this is never a problem. AJ can attest to this. I don't let anything get stale. But for others of you who are maybe less entrepreneurial in terms of your disposition in life, it's easy to get in a groove. It's easy to get kind of just in a rhythm and go, this is the way we do things. So today we're going to be talking about how you can do that without it just causing all these major ripples and waves and disruption in your church, and more fundamentally, getting away from the mission of why you're trying to do things in the first place, which would be the worst case scenario. So before we hop into the points though, AJ, maybe we can just walk through some reasons why churches should do this and some challenges around innovation.
Yeah, well, first of all, ministries do have a shelf life. So no matter how much we feel like, we found the right thing or a good thing, it's just doesn't carry on in perpetuity without change. And it is a myth that things don't change. Like if we don't do anything different, we'll continue to get the same results. And that's just not true, because everything around us changes constantly. Mm-hmm. I mean, the world iterates day by day by day. And so, culture changes, time changes, job changes. I mean, everything that affects people's lives has an effect on the church as well. The way we consume information, the styles of information and entertainment that the culture is interested in, all of these things have subtle effects within the church. And doing the exact same ministry that might have been super successful over time, it eventually has a tendency to not or may not. So we just have to know that we've got to be kind of keeping up with the times, as the men of Issachar did in the Old Testament, so that we can iterate without having wholesale change. Like every 9 years, we got to wipe the slate clean because everything is broken. That's kind of the point of today's episode. Let's stay mission focused, but make iterative changes, smaller changes to remain focused. So anyway, ministries have a shelf life. Don't assume they don't.
Yeah, that's true. And I think I want to, for all the people yelling the naysayers, I'm hearing your criticism that sometimes when people hear ministries have a shelf life, that means we have to blow up our church every 3 to 5 years. And that's not what we're saying. We will get into more detail. I don't want to jump ahead too far, but just trust us and keep listening to the episode, because saying that something has a shelf life doesn't mean you have to radically change everything you're doing. It does mean though, you need to have an awareness of what's working and what's not working and why it's working or not working. So we'll talk about that more in a minute. The next one I want to mention, AJ, is that not all ideas are a good idea. So this is directed maybe at the man in the mirror. I have more ideas than any of them could be very good. So it takes some discipline for me to think through what's actually good and what's just interesting. And so we're going to talk about that. So if you are entrepreneurial kind of disposition, this episode is also for you, because I've got some advice on how to make sure you don't get yourself in too deep on something that's not necessarily a very good idea.
Yeah. And our final sort of introductory setup piece is that mission creep can be real, and program creep is a danger to the church. So making decisions without constantly and very intentionally coming back to our core mission. Does this new idea help us to make disciples more or better, or mature people in their faith more or better? And so it's easy sometimes to make these, 1 degree changes that over time have gotten us off our mission, and just collect things then in the church that makes ministry more complicated, requires more people or more resources to get it done, without making us or allowing us to make progress towards our mission and vision in the church. So just have to be careful. We got to keep the main thing, and optimize what we do over, regular checkups over long periods of time for minor tactical, you might hear, adjustments that are just kind of ongoing. It's not weekly changes, and it's not every 5-year changes. We got to come into the middle.
Yeah, that's a great point, which is a good maybe opportunity just to briefly mention and remind you that on November 7th, we have within the Healthy Churches Toolkit a workshop on creating an annual ministry plan. Really every year we need to there are certain aspects, like this workshop is actually going to assume there are certain things you've already done. Like you kind of know where you're going in terms of your vision. You've hopefully gone through a strategic envisioning process. You've built the framework for a discipleship pathway. You know what your mission is. So we're not focusing on sort of that high level work that you would maybe do once every 5 or so years. We're talking about the annual ministry plan. Like, how do we keep that fresh so that we continue to make progress towards that vision every single year and not get stuck? And so we've got some things we're talking about today that would be helpful in that. But then we have that workshop. It's on November 7th at 1 p.m. You have to be registered for the toolkit at any level. So a basic or a plus account gets you in there. Don't tell anybody, but you could just sign up for a free trial to get in there and be present and enjoy the workshop. And then hopefully you would enjoy other things in there and want to stick around. But that would be a way for you to get the workshop being there for free. Don't tell anybody I said that.
It would be
a way. Yeah, it would be a way. Okay, let's hop into these key points here.
All right. Number 1, we're talking about iteration to innovate. Iterate to innovate. And so this is, what we just mentioned a minute ago. We're not talking wholesale change. We're not talking blowing things up and starting from scratch every time we maybe are detecting a downward trend in either participation or results out of a ministry. So being able to make smaller changes, evaluate what's working and what's not working. So automatically now, Scott, some people are like, evaluate, hold on, you can't just drop that bomb and move on. How and are we evaluating ministries? This has got to be a component of leadership in the church, that we're aware of what we're doing and we're monitoring it to some level. Again, not with such granularity that, we've got a score for every Sunday on how did that Sunday school class go this week. You've got to zoom out a little bit, but we do have to have some kind of system for feedback, evaluation, understanding of how things are going, some kind of information that can provide a trend line of some sort so that we know what's happening in our ministries. But we're talking about making one thing one better, something that we can go, it seems like that piece maybe isn't quite right anymore. Let's make an adjustment to that. It doesn't mean, okay, small groups are done. Sunday school is done. We got to dream up something new. I mean, that may be the case your church if you haven't done anything in decades, but that's not what our first point is.
Yeah, this is a great point. So I think iteration is good on two levels. One, it creates the least amount of disturbance. So when we iterate and we don't blow things up, you're less likely to get broad scale pushback, right? Because if it's a small change, it's a small improvement, a small optimization, a small streamlining thing, most people are not going to go, I have a problem with that. Some people might, but it's probably a small number. So you minimize the opportunity for wide scale criticism when we iterate versus when we innovate. Unless there's a need for a huge change. I mean, sometimes there's a need, like something just is fundamentally broken and we need to go a different direction. But I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about in a normative circumstance where things are going okay, or they're plateaued. Iteration is usually much better than something totally brand new. The other beautiful thing about iteration, AJ, is that imagine you walk up to a piece of equipment, okay, and you've never operated it before, which is very dangerous. But imagine you walk up to a piece of equipment and it's got, 50 buttons on it. And you want to make it turn on and you want to make it go. You make it want to go brr. So you press as many buttons as you can press with both of your hands at the same time. And then it starts to do things, but you don't know why. Like, what did I press that made it turn on or made it start to smoke or whatever? Like what, if you press one button at a time, you then go, oh, this one's the power button. Okay, this one makes it go faster. This one makes it go slower. When you iterate, it's like pressing one button at a time. And when you go, this did nothing. Okay, so that's a change we don't really need to make or keep pursuing because it didn't move the needle. When we added childcare, when we moved from Sunday to Wednesday, okay, this really increased participation, or this really decreased participation. So when you make small iterative changes, you can determine how much of an impact that change makes on participation or engagement or satisfaction or more importantly, hopefully, like discipleship outcomes. So when you iterate, you get more information about the impact of the change on the end. So I've learned this with the toolkits. Like anytime I want to implement something on the back end of the toolkit, and I'm not a techie person. I've had to learn a lot of things in the building of this. And I've learned I should make one change at a time if it's something I don't understand. So I can go, oh, I added this line of code and then this thing broke. Mm-hmm. Versus I add a bunch of code and then I'm like, I don't know what the problem was. So
yeah,
same idea.
This is kind of this is like in the troubleshooting jobs, this is it. I mean, I come from a tech background and you want to make one change at a time and figure out, did that do it or not? Or if my car is running rough, like it idles rough, it's weird when I'm accelerating. And so I replace the spark plugs, put a new O2 sensor and ran some fuel injector cleaner through the tank and it's better. Okay, well, which one of those was it? We don't know. So if it happens again, you got to keep doing all three unless you want to take the time to do things one at a time and figure out what fixed this issue. So yeah, you might be able to solve the problem with the throw the kitchen sink at it approach, but it's inefficient, might be expensive, and you haven't learned anything from it.
Yeah, so let me take a concrete example of this that might be common in the church. A thing that we hear sometimes from churches is small groups don't work at our church. Okay, what about, tell me about your small group ministry. What about it's not working? There could be any number of things that if you made an iterative change, it could be better. When are you meeting? Is there childcare available? Who is leading them? What is the content? What is the preparation work required for each leader? What kind of support system are there for the leaders? What is our system for getting people plugged into those groups? What is the follow-up for people who express interest in a group? Do we just place people? Or how are the groups structured in terms of, are we doing age-based groups? Are we just kind of putting people, what is it? So you can start, every single one of those things I listed, AJ, is a button you can press.
That's right.
So when you start pressing the buttons, you can go, it isn't that small groups don't work. It's that this day of the week doesn't work.
Yeah.
It's not that small groups don't work. It's that the free-for-all on Right Now Media, it doesn't work. But sermon-based small groups, which we can create the sermon discussion guides in the Healthy Churches Toolkit in seconds, that does work. So those are all buttons that you can press. So I don't want to get stuck on this point, but I really do think when it comes to innovation, iteration is the key to successful innovation in most ministry cases.
Here, let me pound on somebody's toes out there. Did your small group ministry fail because you felt pressured into doing it? You didn't want to do it, and your attitude towards it was subtly negative throughout the entire experiment. And then, So there you go. For everybody that just turned off the podcast, it's like too close to home. Night, night.
Yeah. All of those things do matter, your attitude and your perspective. So, all right, let's move on to point number 2. Point number 2 is beta test within secondary ministry. So, secondary ministries, if you're like, what do you mean by secondary ministries? We did an episode, AJ, was 226, correct?
226 was one of them. Yeah. Primary versus secondary ministries. Yeah.
So rather than go down the rabbit trail for 30 minutes on primary and secondary ministries, go down a whole episode that's focused on primary and secondary ministries. But essentially the Cliff's Notes version is secondary ministries are secondary things. They are optional things that you don't expect everyone to participate in, but have a relationship to the primary ministry, which is the main thing that you want people to participate in that it's a step before or it's a step beyond. So it's something that you do to promote the main thing, or it's something that you do like it's a deeper level of engagement beyond the main thing. So when you want to try something that's totally brand new, most of the time, try to find a beta test environment for this. How could we do a smaller scale version of this thing to see if it's a very good idea? Because sometimes things are not a good idea. So maybe don't launch the whole small group ministry initially if you don't have small groups. Maybe launch a small group. Find a group of people who are interested in starting small groups. Have them start a small group for a semester. See how it goes. See what you can learn. Figure out what do you find out about that particular group in the night of the week that they're meeting. Or, if they try that for a semester or for 9 weeks, of the 10 people who signed up for that beta small group, what was their attendance like over that 9 weeks? Were they 100% there, or were you finding that, only half the people could be there most of the time? Why? Well, it was a bad night, or the child care was poor, or whatever. So you can learn a lot about those buttons for iteration in a beta test environment before you roll something out broader within the whole church.
Yeah. So this is a good environment for things that maybe are going to end up affecting even the whole church, like communication systems, a new piece of technology or software, planning systems, things like that. Mm-hmm. You can try that out in a smaller test environment before broadly putting out, instead of like a full release, you're like, all right, everybody give us your feedback. Let's do a limited release and test it that way.
This is something I would push really hard in the leadership pipeline work that we do with churches, because we're often moving towards a coaching model and some just new approaches to training and things like that. Churches are very excited about it. When they go through the training and we start building this stuff out, they want to get at it immediately. And I pump the brakes for them and I say, don't do that. Try it out first. One, you have all these people that you're going to want to do coaching, but they've never been coached. So at minimum, you need to start with that group that you're wanting to do coaching. And your staff or your higher level leaders need to do coaching with them first, so they have the experience of being coached before you're throwing them into the lion's den of starting to do coaching. Plus, you want to test, like, is our template for these meetings correct? Is our timing for this correct? Is our rhythm for this correct? You want to try all of that out before you roll it out. Otherwise, it'll be an unmitigated disaster, and people will be mad that it happened. And then it'll be another one of those things that you go, remember that time that we tried such and such, and then it's on sort of the dust heap of your church's history. So all of this, both the iteration and this point, AJ, I would want to say, take a longer view. I'm not suggesting that you shouldn't make the most of every moment. You should. But take a longer view. You don't have to win in 5 minutes. You need to win over 5 years. And that's advice I'm telling myself. Like those are things I have to tell myself too, because I want every idea I have to be a great idea and for it to work right away. And the reality is most good ideas take iteration for them to fully develop, and it takes time for them to be successful. So I'm not yelling at you, I'm yelling at me. But this is point 2 is for the entrepreneurial types like me. Try things, learn from them, make changes, and they'll be successful.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, evaluate things on their merits, and try to see if we just need to work on this a little bit longer and let it go. Scott Ball, hear the words, Scott Ball.
Yeah, listen. The Healthy Churches Toolkit wouldn't exist. It is in many ways a second or third iteration of online training that we've built in the past that has had its successes. Actually, even with this, we're continuing to roll it out. We're getting good feedback. People who are in the toolkit, by the way, absolutely love it. But we're hearing the things that can be better, and we're learning from them, and we're making it better. So yeah, that's my lived experience at the moment. That's where that's coming from. But yeah, just have a longer view. The things you're doing are really good. Just keep doing them the right way for a long time.
Yeah. All right. Our third point, if you add, what will you subtract? So Scott, I don't know, maybe me and you, let's see if we get into this. If some things in the past, you and I have been I've been a little softer on, you're a little harder on. And so I'm curious on if you add, what will you subtract? Are you hard lined on this? Because I would be like, I don't want to be legalistic about it. We have to stop doing something if we add something new. But the point of this, I think you and I will agree on the point for sure, is that if we're going to add something new, we want to see our previous points. We cannot add clutter. We cannot add things, or we cannot keep something that isn't really effective and add something in correction for that without removing it. So yeah, I don't know. Are you hardline on this? Is this an equation that needs to equal 0 at the end, or are you like, yeah,
no?
We can have a conversation.
It depends. I mean, that would be a hard thing to make a blanket statement about. So if we're talking about a church plant or a replant or a church of 50 people, I would expect them to do fewer things than a church of 500 people. And I would expect as they grow that they would add things, and they wouldn't necessarily be subtracting some things. However, the guiding principle isn't the number of programs, it's the discipleship impact of what we're doing.
That's right. Yep.
So I, generally speaking, I fail to see the overall net positive of continuing to add a bunch of ministries when it comes to discipleship impact. I don't know that I can think of an instance where it was, wow, we offered so many, this large Golden Corral buffet. I mean, the quality of the food at Golden Corral does not increase because of the quantity of options. Generally, it diminishes.
Have you tried the prime rib, Scott? I mean,
you know what? Actually, I was at the Golden Corral this last week because I got a coupon. Yeah, I got a coupon in the mix. My kids love the Golden Corral, and I got a coupon for $5 all-you-can-eat buffet, including the drink for the kids. And I was like, "Kids, we're going to the Golden Corral." Allison was like, "Bring me Chick-fil-A home when you come back."
Fun fact for podcast listeners: that was AJ's very first job. I worked at Golden Corral.
Really?
And I worked there exactly 1 week, and I quit.
Wow.
And I said, I will never, ever work in food service again. And I haven't. So, yeah.
My dad calls it the trough.
Huh? Yeah, it's good. It's good.
Yeah. For our international listeners, it's a buffet. It's an all-you-can-eat buffet.
A lot of options.
And a lot of options, and the only thing that you can say is demonstrably good are the rolls. Everything else is fine.
You got a fave, eh? Okay.
Yeah, the rolls are really good.
And enough experience with the Golden Corral that you're like,
I've been twice in the last 20 years, probably. One of them was last week.
Well, that's quite an impact the rolls had on you then. That comes to mind. So, all right. Here's a thought I've got on this point. If you add, what will you subtract? Staying away from legalism in this and turning it into a math equation. I think if we went into things, though, with this in mind, and we ask the question, if we're going to add this, what are we going to subtract? It forces intentionality. It forces a conversation of constantly reevaluating what we're doing. And we would then have to make a choice and say, we truly believe everything else we're doing should stay because of its effectiveness. We don't need to remove something. Or, yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, hold
we
on.
do need
Actually,
to
you should take it a step further.
Okay.
I think if you ask that question, if you ask the question, if we add this, what will we take away? And then you do the evaluation, we go, we shouldn't take anything away. Then the follow-up question to that is, then why are we adding this?
True. Sure. Yeah. Yeah. It would have to be very niche-y, really, at that point. Like there's a specific thing that something else isn't filling, right?
Correct. And then, right, which then to me cycle back to, okay,
Brings
are
back
we
to
sure
point
that
one. Do we need
then
to
are we
iterate?
sure that thing that we're saying has a gap, then are we sure that that thing needs to stay?
That's good. It's a good line of questioning. Yeah.
Maybe. And if at the end you go, no, it does need to stay because if we got rid of it, then this is not fully replacing that. Okay, fine. Now we've come full circle and we can feel good about moving on. But you really should cycle through that list.
I think you should. Yeah.
Versus just rushing to say yes to things. And I think you can say yes to a beta test for something pretty quickly. I mean, I don't see any problem with that. You can go, all right, well, we got this group of people, they're chattering, they go, oh, we really should start on this, such and such.
Yeah, it has enough merit to beta test.
You can go, all right, yeah, well, sure, try it, and then we'll evaluate the results of that.
Yeah.
I don't think you should be like, but there's a difference between beta testing something and rolling it out to the whole huge announcements to the congregation and all the attention it's going to get on the website and on social media and all that. So, think about it.
Totally.
I think I would just say on this, it might help to give a concrete example of how you can start something for a good reason and then it just becomes a distraction and a problem. At the church that I attend, and this is not a critical statement of them. It ends well. So just hear the whole story. In 2020, during all the COVID craziness, like many churches, our church could not do a trunk or treat because it just was, October 2020. It was deemed not a great idea. Fine, that's great. But we wanted to do something. The church wanted to do something. So the church decided to do, go to a pumpkin patch, a local farm, to, where there's a corn maze and a pumpkin patch and those kinds of things. And in that kind of environment, people can choose their own level of interaction. So they could not go at all, or they could go and kind of keep their distance, and it's outside. And, it was that kind of environment, at least here where I live in East Tennessee, where people felt generally comfortable. It met an outreach need and a fellowship need in a time where those things were really missing in people's lives. So I think it would have checked all the boxes for why would we add this. And that year they did subtract the trunk or treat. Didn't happen. So it was subtracted. It was replaced with this. Well, the next year rolls around, and at least here where I live, I know everyone's experiences maybe were different in different places, but at least in East Tennessee, by October 2021, people were like, life's more back to normal. People wanted the trunk or treat, give us trunk or treat. But people also really liked the farm thing. So for a couple of years, the church was doing farm thing plus trunk or treat, which then created this tension of why are we doing both of these things within a week of each other, 10 days of each other?
Yeah.
It's a ton of time. It's a ton of resources, a ton of volunteers. It's a ton of attention. It's a lot to manage. And so then the church has to go, eventually they went to a new trunk or treat type event. It's not exactly trunk or treat, something else. And they eliminated the farm thing. So it ended well because they had this discussion and decided it isn't good for us to do both of these things. But I bring this story up, AJ, because in reality, what happens, most churches, they start things for a good reason, a totally legitimate good reason. But they never get to the end of this story where they go, why are we doing all of this? Is there a better way forward for this? Should we streamline something? Should we get rid of something? And we don't clean out ministries. And so we get program clutter, and this is a real problem.
Yeah. Well, so one thing you can start up without affecting anything else for 7 days is Healthy Church's Toolkit subscription.
Good. That was good. That was a good segue.
You should start that up. Today. Go to malforsgroup.com/toolkit and jump in there for 7 days. You can cancel anytime before then. You're not going to be charged anything. You got 7 days, and go in there and see, because we do have our strategic envisioning training in there. And there's a whole module on discipleship pathway talking about primary, secondary ministries and helping you streamline what you're doing for, to be able to evaluate it so that, if you're making progress or not. So go check that out. Hey, for those of you, and there's a lot of you outside of North America, if your church is not in the US or Canada, go to healthychurchesglobal.com, because you get the toolkit at no cost to you. It's part of our nonprofit ministry that we support churches outside of North America with the tools and resources that you guys need without affecting your bottom line on for many of you, very, very limited financial resources within your congregations. So we love our North American churches. Come on, guys. Help us do ministry together here.
Well, I do want to add there, because we've got a lot of North American churches that are struggling too.
Yeah, that's true. We have some scholarships available, or grants.
We have grants.
Mm-hmm. Partial grants
that can take up to 50% of the cost of a Plus account. So that's not infinite. There's kind of a limit on that, and you don't have to apply for that full grant. Like, you can go, well, we don't need that much help, but we need a little bit of help. If you go to malforsgroup.com/toolkit, actually there's a link there where you can click and apply for a partial grant to help that too. So we're equal opportunity desiring to leverage our nonprofit support to help churches in North America and around the world.
Yeah. All right. Scott, what's our final thoughts on making space for innovation without straying from our mission?
I think that people, just generally speaking, if we were to maybe apply some the temperament logic to it, you have people who are on the upper side of the DISC chart, the D's and the I's, who are temperamentally geared towards change, and wanting to try new things. And then you have the people on the bottom side, the S's and the C's and the S's, who are temperamentally averse to change. And when it comes to innovation, there are tips that both sides of that line need to hear. And for those of you who don't want to change anything, what you need to hear is iteration is a great way to try things without making waves and rocking the boat too much. And for those of you who are like me or are more entrepreneurial, you need to hear you don't have to go all in on every idea. Iteration is good for you too, because it gives you a chance to see what works so you can develop an idea further. So there's advice for you no matter how you're wired.
Yeah, we did a deep dive on DISC also. I think that was May of 2023. I think
it's a good series. Yeah, we did a week on each letter.
Yeah, so go back and check that out. All right, well, this has been episode 265 of the Church Revitalization Podcast. Today's article is at malforsgroup.com/265. We'd love to have you over there. You can watch on YouTube also. You can go subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can just search Malfors Group there and find that really easily, and enjoy the video.
All these are also in the Healthy Churches Toolkit, by the way, and which I used. I was trying to figure out which episode did we talk about, whatever. And the search function within the toolkit's better than it is on our website. I was able to find what it is I was looking for.
Yeah.
So, there's hours of training. Like if you're looking for stuff for leadership development and continuing education and things like that for your team, there are hours and hours of this. Tens of thousands of words of articles. And those are all in the toolkit too.
Lots of words. All right, everybody. Hey, thanks for being with us. We love you guys, and we'll see you again next week.